I've lived alone for most of my adult life, so I know my routines better than most people know theirs. I know what time the pipes in my building groan in the morning. I know which floorboard creaks when I step on it at night. I know the sound of my own refrigerator cycling on at 3 a.m. When something is off, I notice. This started about 8 months ago in the apartment building I was living in at the time. 6 units, 3 floors. I was on the second floor, Unit 4. My neighbor across the hall had lived there longer than me. Quiet guy. 50s, maybe? We exchanged nods in the hallway. I didn't know his name. The first thing I noticed was the timing. Every time I left my apartment, he was in the hallway. Not every single time, but enough that I started keeping a mental count without really meaning to. I'd open my door to take out trash at 11 p.m., and he'd be stepping out of his unit at the same moment. I'd come home from the grocery store on a Sunday morning, and he'd be coming up the stairs right as I reached the landing. 3 times in 1 week we stood at our respective doors at the exact same instant, keys in hand, like we'd rehearsed it. I told myself it was coincidence. Buildings create rhythms. People's schedules align without either of them realizing it. That's a reasonable thing to believe, and for a while I believed it. Then one evening I was on the phone with my sister, standing by my window that overlooked the front entrance. I watched my neighbor leave the building. Watched him get into his car and drive away. I kept the call going for another 20 minutes, and then decided to go get some food. I grabbed my keys, opened my door. He was standing at his door across the hall, key in the lock. He'd come back in the time it took me to finish a phone conversation. He smiled. Said hey. Went inside. I stood in the hallway for a moment before I made myself walk downstairs. Over the next 2 weeks I started paying closer attention. Not paranoid attention, just aware. And what I found was a pattern that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up slowly, the way it does when something is wrong but your brain hasn't quite named it yet. He wasn't matching my schedule. He was anticipating it. The trash. The mail. The late night runs to the corner store. He was appearing just before I did, or simultaneously, in a way that ruled out reaction. You cannot react to a door opening from across a hallway fast enough to be outside your own door at the same moment. The timing was too precise for that. So I started testing it. I varied my schedule deliberately. Took the trash out at random hours. Left for work at different times each morning. Started using the back entrance some nights instead of the front. The appearances dropped off significantly. He didn't vanish entirely because he lived there, but the constant coincidences stopped. Which told me everything I needed to know. Because if it had been coincidence, my schedule changing wouldn't have affected it. Coincidences don't respond to variables. But this did. I started thinking about how he'd gotten my schedule in the first place. My curtains were thin. My unit faced the interior courtyard, and so did his. If he sat by his window, he could see when my lights turned on and off. He could track my patterns through the glass for months without me ever knowing I was being tracked. I bought blackout curtains. I reported it to my landlord in vague terms because I had no proof of anything concrete. My landlord looked at me the way people look at you when they've already decided you're overreacting. The thing that made me finally leave happened about 3 weeks after I started varying my schedule. I came home late. Genuinely random, around midnight on a Tuesday. As I turned the corner into the second floor hallway, I saw my neighbor standing outside my door. Not his door. My door. He was just standing there facing it. Not knocking. Not doing anything. Arms at his sides, looking at my door in the dark hallway like he was waiting for something. He heard me on the stairs and turned around. His expression didn't change much. He said he thought he'd heard something in the hall and came to check. He smiled the same smile he always smiled. Then he went inside. I stood in that hallway for a long time after his door closed. I was out of that apartment within 6 weeks. I told people it was for unrelated reasons, and maybe I half believed that at the time. But I think about him sometimes. I think about that smile specifically. It was so calm. So unbothered. Like he'd been caught doing something completely ordinary. Like standing outside a neighbor's door in the dark at midnight was just a thing people do, and he couldn't understand why I'd find it strange. That's the part that stays with me. This story was posted by a user I'll call Thornwood Dave. He deleted the post about a week after putting it up, but not before several people had already saved it. This is his account, as close to his original words as I can get. Dave was an avid hiker. Solo trips mostly. He'd been doing it for years without a single incident. The kind of person who tracks his mileage and knows his trails well enough that he stopped bringing his GPS on the familiar ones. He had a trail in the Pacific Northwest he'd done 4 or 5 times a year for a long time. He knew it the way you know a road you've driven 1,000 times. On one particular trip he'd brought a new camera. Halfway through the hike he stopped at a ridge overlook he'd photographed a dozen times before. Good light that day. He took 3 or 4 shots, put the camera away and kept walking. He didn't look at the photos until he got home that night. The first 2 shots were exactly what he expected. The ridge, the tree line, clean light across the valley. The third shot had a person in it. Standing at the far left edge of the frame, half behind the trees. A figure in dark clothing, facing the camera. Facing Dave. Close enough to clearly be a person but too far to make out any features. Dave didn't remember seeing anyone on the trail that day. The parking lot had only his car in it when he arrived and when he left. He sat there and stared at the photo for a long time, turning that over in his head. Then he looked at the 4th shot. He'd taken all 4 photos within about 15 seconds of each other. In the 4th shot the figure was gone. He spent a long time trying to explain it rationally. A hiker who wandered briefly into frame. Light and shadow playing tricks in the trees the way they sometimes do. He almost convinced himself, and then he made the mistake of zooming in. The figure wasn't standing passively. The weight was forward. The head was tilted slightly. It was the posture of someone actively watching rather than someone who happened to be nearby. And there was something in what might have been the figure's hand. Long and thin and indistinct. Dave couldn't identify it. He went back to the trail one more time after that, with a friend. He stood in the exact spot where he'd been when he took the photo and looked toward the tree line where the figure had been standing. To be visible in that frame from that distance, a person would have had to be standing roughly 40 feet off the trail in dense undergrowth. Not passing through. Not crossing from one side to the other. Standing in it. In the thick of it, in the dark of it, far enough off the path that no one would see them from the trail unless they were specifically looking. He never found anything in the brush. No footprints, though the ground was dry. No sign anyone had been there at all. Dave ended his post by saying he'd hiked that trail his whole adult life, and had always felt completely safe on it. He said the thing that unsettled him most wasn't even the figure in the photo. It was realizing that when he took that shot, he'd been standing at that overlook with his back to those trees for several minutes. Camera up, absorbed in the view, completely unaware of anything behind him. Whatever was standing in those trees had that entire time to watch him from behind, and he never once felt it. He said he hasn't gone back to that trail since. He said some places stop feeling like yours once you understand you were never actually alone in them. I think about that a lot. I want to say up front that I've told this to people in my life and most of them think I'm being paranoid. Maybe I am. But I want to put it somewhere it can be read by people who might actually understand why it scared me the way it did. I'm a woman. I live alone. Those 2 facts matter. About 2 years ago I was active on a fairly small hobby subreddit. I won't say which one and that'll make sense in a minute. Small community, maybe 10,000 subscribers. The kind of place where you start recognizing usernames over time and people have a rough sense of who you are. I'd been posting there for about a year and I liked it. It felt safe the way small online spaces can feel safe when everyone seems to know each other. One afternoon I got a direct message from an account I didn't recognize. Brand new account, maybe 2 weeks old, no post history anywhere. The message said, "Hey, didn't I see you at?" and then named a coffee shop I went to regularly. I didn't respond. I figured it was spam or someone mixing me up with someone else and I moved on. 3 days later I got another message. Different account, different username, but the same writing style and the same no post history. This one said, "You have a really distinctive laugh. I've noticed it at," and then it named a bar I sometimes went to. I felt cold reading that. Not nervous, not creeped out in the vague way you get sometimes online. Actually cold. Because I had mentioned that bar exactly once, in a post on the subreddit, casually, months earlier. Someone had gone back through my post history far enough to find a single offhand comment, and had remembered it. I didn't respond to that one either. I reported both accounts. Then I did something I probably should have done sooner. I went back through my own post history and started reading it the way a stranger would read it, looking for what could be pieced together about me from the outside. It took me about 30 minutes to genuinely scare myself. From my posts alone, across several months of normal participation in what I thought was a safe little community, a careful reader could figure out the general neighborhood I lived in, the coffee shop I went to most mornings, my rough daily schedule based on the times I posted, the gym I went to, my first name from a comment where I'd introduced myself once, and that bar. None of it was ever in the same post. It was scattered across months of casual conversation. But assembled in order, read carefully, it was a profile of my daily life. I deleted my entire post history. I changed my username. I made a new account with nothing identifying in it at all. 2 weeks later I got a message on the new account. It said, "I wasn't sure it was you at first. But you have a really distinctive way of writing." Nothing else after that. New account, no history, no way to connect it to anyone. But they had found me anyway across a username change and a scrubbed history. Just from the way I write. I went private after that and locked everything down. I became a lot more careful about what I put online, even in spaces that feel small and safe. Because here's the thing about feeling anonymous. You feel it. The person reading you doesn't. I never found out who it was. I still don't know. I like to tell myself it was someone with genuinely bad social skills who thought this was a normal way to reach out to someone they recognized. But I started locking my doors a little more carefully after that. And I never mentioned the bar again.